My name is Charlotte Williams, and before you form any image of who I am now, you need to face the stark truths about who I was. For many years, I walked streets where hope doesn't enter, where evil disguises itself as survival, and where the soul learns to hide behind a manufactured coldness. I lived a life of crime as if it were an inevitable routine, believing I would never face any consequences, as if the world had given me permission to hurt, destroy, and move on without looking back. At the time, I thought that was strength, but today I understand it was merely evidence that I was spiritually dead, even though my body was still breathing. I got involved in dangerous schemes, trafficked drugs that destroyed families, participated in deals that ruined futures, and influenced young people who only needed a way out. But I delivered them a prison. I did all this with a coldness that shames me, because at that time, I truly believed there was no other way to survive. I told myself I was a victim of my environment, but deep down, I knew I was choosing that path with every step. The most elaborate lie was the one I told myself: I control everything, when in reality, I was the most controlled person in that reality. Easy money blinded me. Endless nights felt like freedom. Respect for fear fueled my broken ego. I confused noise with life, adrenaline with purpose, and chaos with identity. With each new wrong decision, my soul sank a little deeper, and I pretended not to notice. I believed that nothing could touch me, that I was invincible, that death was afraid of me. But there's something no one admits in the world of crime. Evil exacts its due, and it exacts its due with precision. And the reckoning came on the day my heart stopped, and my conscience opened its eyes to a place I never imagined I would face. What I experienced after that last breath is unlike anything a human being expects to encounter, and that's precisely where my story truly begins. I know this story has already made you reflect or realize something within yourself, so I ask that you subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This helps this message reach other people who also need to hear truths that no one else dares to say. Stay with me, because what comes next is something that can transform the way you see life, death, and the destiny of the soul. When I think about the life I led before death touched my limits, I realize that everything I called freedom was, in fact, a prison, carefully constructed by my own choices. In the beginning, crime seemed to offer me exactly what I believed I deserved after so much accumulated suffering. Easy money that arrived like a breath of fresh air, nights that made me forget any fragment of consciousness, people who treated me as someone powerful, and streets that seemed to bend when I passed. I felt part of something big, part of a world where my name carried fear, respect, and a false sense of importance. It was as if I had finally found a place where nothing could hurt me, when in reality, everything around me was slowly destroying what little remained of me. I enjoyed the feeling of opening doors that were locked for many. I liked the adrenaline that coursed through my body when deliveries were made, when dubious deals were closed, when alliances were sealed through threats disguised as promises. I got used to waking up to the sound of my own racing heart, believing that frantic rhythm was a sign of life, while in reality it revealed how far I was from true existence. Crime enveloped me like a comfortable cloak, offering a corrupted version of belonging, purpose, and identity. The scariest thing was that the deeper I sank, the more certain I was that I was on the right path. I confused respect with fear, admiration with convenience, authority with violence. Nothing seemed wrong because everything, absolutely everything, was justified within a logic I had created myself to avoid facing the pain of looking into my own soul. I believed I was strong, but I was just too fragile to admit I needed help. And while I lived in this false glory, something silent and dark began to grow inside me, something that would herald the end of everything I thought I controlled. It was precisely during this period of apparent greatness that the first sign of my downfall manifested itself, and it came from such a small place that I could never have imagined how much it would change the course of my story. I remember, with absolute clarity, the exact moment when everything began to change within me. Not because it was grand or remarkable, but precisely because it was too small for me to perceive the depth of what was happening. The first step into darkness never arrives as a scream or an obvious threat. It arrives as a whisper that blends with the circumstances, as a thought that seems justifiable, as an opportunity that deep down seemed harmless. That's how it was with me. I agreed to participate in something simple, a favor, a quick ride, a small act that in my eyes had no major consequences, because I mentally repeated that it wouldn't directly harm anyone. But at that moment, without realizing it, I opened a spiritual door that should never have been touched. When I delivered that first package, I felt a strange chill rising through my body, something between adrenaline and stifled guilt. But I was so used to ignoring my emotions that I swallowed the discomfort as if it were nothing. The problem is that right after that first step, everything around me began to change. And the change didn't come from the outside, but from within. The feeling of being limited disappeared. My conscience fell silent as if it had been switched off, and the impulse to continue being part of that world became increasingly natural, as if a part of me had finally found its language. I started mentally repeating that it was just work, that I wasn't hurting anyone directly, that other people would do it anyway, and that I was just accepting an opportunity to survive. That was the most dangerous point, because at that moment I became accustomed to the idea that evil can be rationalized when it suits me. From then on, everything that would once have frightened me began to seem normal, and what would once have paralyzed me became routine. I didn't realize that my heart was being shaped by the silence of guilt, and that with each small decision, I was distancing myself further from what could one day still save me. And it was precisely when my conscience stopped reacting that true darkness began to take hold, transforming my inner self in a way I would only realize much later. From that first step towards what I believed to be merely a practical choice, something within me began to transform in such a slow and silent way that I couldn't perceive how far I was distancing myself from everything that was still human within me. As time passed, what had previously caused me discomfort began to be seen as a natural part of my life, and the guilt, which initially followed my steps like a persistent shadow, began to disappear as if it had lost the strength to reach me. I remember moments when I saw people suffering because of the same choices I supported, but my heart was already so hardened that instead of compassion, I felt only a kind of emotional distance, as if none of it had any relation to me. I didn't realize exactly when I stopped feeling empathy, but I know it happened. Before, when I saw a mother crying for her son who had been involved in a crime, I still felt a discomfort that haunted me for hours. Later, I began to look at scenes like that with a coldness that would frighten me today, but which, at that time, became my greatest defense. I became increasingly insensitive, as if my heart had been covered by layers of emotional concrete that prevented me from realizing how much I was dehumanizing myself. The pain of others no longer penetrated my barriers, and my own pain seemed distant, as if I had ceased to exist within myself. The worst part is that this indifference, which I believed to be protection, was actually the biggest symptom of my soul being suffocated little by little. The more the evil became normalized, the more lost I became, and the more lost I became, the more I believed I was in control of the circumstances. I became just an echo of what I once was, a body acting on autopilot, a mind that no longer recognized its limits. And it was precisely in this state of complete emotional numbness that fate prepared to confront me in a way that no human being can imagine facing. Because when the heart stops feeling, the body continues living, but only until the moment when life decides to collect what has been ignored for so long. The night everything changed didn't begin any differently than the others. And perhaps that's precisely what makes that moment so memorable, because there was no warning, no premonition, no sign that I was about to cross the line that separates life from what exists after it. I was involved in yet another of those commitments that, over time, had become part of my distorted routine, and I carried with me the arrogance of someone who believes that nothing can interrupt their journey, even when that journey is made of dangerous paths. I remember walking down the street with the feeling that I was above any threat, as if the world had learned to respect me because of the fear I represented. Ignoring that deep down, it was precisely fear that kept me trapped in that reality. The ambush happened so fast, my body didn't have time to react. I heard footsteps, muffled voices, a strange movement coming from a side alley, and before I could comprehend what was happening, the sound that pierced my ears changed everything forever. A dry, precise, direct shot, as if calculated to find exactly where my false invincibility hid its greatest weakness. I felt the impact, like a wave, that coursed through my entire body, and in that instant I understood that all the stories I told myself about being untouchable were nothing more than fragile illusions that disintegrated in the cold air of that night. The ground seemed to come crashing down on me with impossible speed, and the more my body gave way, the harder my mind tried to cling to the life slipping away behind my thoughts. I heard distant voices, running footsteps, cries cut off by the wind, but everything seemed to move away from me, as if the world was slipping through my fingers without me being able to stop it. The feeling of losing control for the first time in years was devastating, because I realized, with a clarity that only death can offer, that there is no power at all when the last thread of life begins to break. And it was precisely at that moment, when my body finally yielded to the inevitable, that something impossible began to happen inside me. Because when my eyes closed to earth, something much deeper opened, and nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to see. When the last vestige of strength was lost within me, I imagined it would all end there, on that cold stretch of street, surrounded by shadows I myself had nurtured for so many years. However, what happened next completely defied any logic or explanation that could have existed in my former life. Instead of sinking into darkness, I felt a strange lightness coursing through my body, as if something was slowly being detached from within me, a sensation that mixed confusion, astonishment, and a fear so profound I couldn't describe it with human words. It was as if I were being pulled out of myself, as if a second version of me, previously dormant, was awakening for the first time. Gradually, I realized the pain had disappeared, and in its place arose a heightened awareness that seemed to see details my physical eyes had never been able to perceive. I saw the distant glow of streetlights, heard the sounds of passing cars, smelled the metallic scent of my own blood on the ground, but at the same time perceived all of this from an impossible perspective. When I tried to move my hands, I noticed something that chilled me to the bone. My hands no longer belonged to the body lying before me. I was standing, and I was fallen at the same time. The sensation of looking at myself from the outside was so disturbing that for a few seconds I simply couldn't think, breathe, or understand. I saw people. Approaching, I heard someone shouting for help, but none of those voices seemed to reach where I was. There was an invisible distance between me and the physical world, as if I had crossed a curtain that separates material existence from that which no one imagines until they experience it. I tried to touch my own body, but my hand passed through the air as if I were made of wind, a realization that brought me such profound terror that my entire soul seemed to tremble. And it was in this state of utter confusion that I realized I wasn't alone in that space between worlds. Because while I was trying to understand my new condition, a presence approached, bringing a light that didn't hurt, but revealed and nothing in me was ready for what was to come. While I remained in that state of complete disorientation, trying to understand what it meant to exist weightless, without a body, and without the deceptive protection I had always been able to build around myself, I felt something different. Approaching, something that produced no sound, but moved everything around it in such a profound way that it seemed to alter the very structure of the space I was in. The light that emerged had no defined form. It didn't hurt the eyes or blind like any earthly light, and yet it penetrated everything I was with an intensity that made me feel completely exposed. I didn't know what was happening, but a part of me, the part that still held an echo of what was once true consciousness, instinctively knew that this presence carried a kind of authority that nothing in the world could match. When that light finally took shape, I realized I wasn't facing an ordinary figure, nor something that could be explained within any human logic. It was Jesus. I didn't recognize him by physical characteristics, but by the way my spirit reacted instantly, as if it had found the origin of everything it had ever sought, even without knowing it. He didn't need to say anything because his presence said it all. And every part of me began to tremble, not from physical fear, but from such an intense awareness of my own choices that it seemed impossible to sustain that gaze that pierced through all the layers I had built to hide my true nature. His eyes were not accusing eyes, but eyes that reflected what I truly was, without any defense, without justification, without masks. And before this reflection, the lie that had sustained my entire life simply crumbled. I felt shame, regret, despair, and a sadness so profound that it seemed to shatter within me everything I had kept dormant for years. There were no screams, no verbal condemnation, because he didn't need to accuse me. The vision of my own truth before him was the most devastating judgment I could face. And in that silence, which weighed more than any words, I understood that this was only the beginning of the revelation. Because after showing me who I was, he would show me something even more impactful: the spiritual consequences of everything I had done. When Jesus allowed me to see the truth behind my choices, I felt as if a curtain I had closed for years was brutally ripped away before my spiritual eyes. The light emanating from him didn't illuminate the environment around me, but illuminated my story, every gesture, every word, every moment in which I chose to hurt instead of care, destroy instead of protect, manipulate instead of love. It was as if my life was being re-exhibited before me, not as a sequence of events, but as a profound revelation of consequences I never had the courage to face. He showed me the faces of the people affected by the decisions I justified as part of the game. And each face held a story I never wanted to know. I saw mothers crying alone on dark balconies, holding photographs of children who would never return. I saw young people who, influenced by my words, chose paths that destroyed their own destinies. I saw families who lost their peace because I contributed to fueling a world where violence seemed inevitable. These weren't just isolated scenes, but living echoes of suffering that continued to multiply, as if each of my actions had generated an endless chain of pain. The most devastating thing is that Jesus didn't need to say anything. He simply allowed me to see the spiritual impact of what I had done, and that impact spoke for itself. I realized that hell wasn't just a place of torment, but a natural consequence of a life lived far from God, a life that repeatedly chooses to ignore truth, conscience, and humanity. It was as if he was showing me that no one is pushed away from the light. Each person moves on their own, step by step, until they can no longer recognize who they have become. The pain I felt at that moment was not the physical pain of death, but the spiritual pain of finally understanding what it means to destroy destinies beyond my own. And it was precisely in this profound revelation that something unexpected began to move around. Me, because after showing me the result of my choices, Jesus would reveal something to me that I never imagined receiving, the possibility of a return. When the revelation finally ceased, and I no longer had the emotional strength to bear the weight of what I had seen, I felt something different approaching me, something that no longer carried the weight of the exposed truth, but the incomprehensible depth of mercy. Jesus looked at me with an expression I cannot describe in human words, because it was not condescension, it was not accusation, nor was it approval. It was a mixture of justice and compassion that can only exist in someone who knows the depths of the human soul, and even so, chooses to extend a hand. I felt that he was, in some way, offering something I never imagined I deserved, something that contradicted all human logic and all the spiritual logic that I myself believed I understood. It was then that I realized he was giving me the opportunity to return, not as a prize, but as a mission. The feeling that overwhelmed me at that moment was so intense that my spirit seemed to tremble, because I understood, painfully, that many people never receive this chance, and that if I was being sent back, it was because there was still something that needed to be done through my existence. I felt as if a new breath was being blown into me, as if life was returning to my chest even before I could comprehend what it meant to be reborn after seeing what I saw. When I opened my eyes in the hospital, the world seemed different, as if every sound, every color, every detail had been pierced by a kind of inner light that revealed the depth of simple things. I couldn't move properly, but my soul was awake in a way I had never experienced before. The first decision I made was to seek out the people I had hurt, not to alleviate my guilt, but because I needed to acknowledge their suffering and ask for forgiveness with the sincerity of someone who has seen the ultimate consequence of their own choices. Each conversation, each tear, each plea for forgiveness was a piece of my soul being slowly rebuilt, and each step I took in that process reminded me that grace is not a prize for the innocent, but a bridge for those who were completely lost. And it was precisely while I was trying to get back on my feet that I understood that my story needed to be told, not for my glory, but for the transformation of those who still walk on the edge of the same abyss that almost swallowed me forever. After everything I've been through, after crossing the border between life and what lies beyond, I understood that no human choice is too small to go unnoticed by God. Because every gesture, every word, and every attitude transforms into something that shapes not only our destiny, but also the destiny of the people who walk around us. As I tried to rebuild my life after returning, I realized that my existence had not been returned simply so that I could continue breathing, but so that I could witness what many avoid acknowledging, the fact that life does not end when the heart stops, and that true justice is not an abstract idea, but a concrete revelation that awaits us on the other side of the line that separates time from eternity. The understanding of this truth has become so profound within me that however much I try to put it into words, I will never be able to fully translate the spiritual impact it has had on my soul. I understood that God is not impressed by masks, justifications, or carefully crafted speeches, because he sees what is hidden behind human intentions, and he knows deeply everything we try to camouflage, even from ourselves. Every thought we hide, every decision we rationalize, and every wound we pretend doesn't exist is clearly seen by the one who understands the most intimate structure of our being. Therefore, looking directly at you now, I do not do so as someone who considers themselves superior or more enlightened, but as someone who has seen and felt in their own soul the weight of wrong choices that seemed irrelevant, but which, in God's eyes, built a path that I myself would never have dared to tread if I had been fully aware of the truth. And it is precisely because I have faced this revelation that I leave this warning with all possible honesty. Do not wait for death to knock on your door to discover who you really are and what you have really sown throughout your life. If there's something in your story that you know needs changing, don't postpone that change to an uncertain future. If there's an attitude that wounds your conscience, don't silence that unease. If there's a habit, relationship, or choice that distances you from God's presence, don't try to hide it, because He already sees, already knows, and already understands everything with a depth that even you don't fully comprehend. What He expects from you is not a perfect life, but a sincere life. Not a flawless soul, but a willing soul. Not someone who has never erred, but someone who recognizes that living apart from Him is walking towards a destiny that no one wants to face when eternity reveals itself without warning. Since returning from that experience, I've realized that the greatest tragedy isn't making mistakes, but remaining trapped in them, believing there's no way out. Spiritual darkness doesn't begin suddenly. It settles in slowly through small concessions we accept in our daily lives, until one day we realize we're too far from the light and unable to return on our own. However, the same eternity that exposes our truth also reveals God's mercy, extending a hand to all who have the courage to admit what they need to abandon. And if there's one thing I've learned in a painful and transformative way, it's that God never rejects a heart that presents itself before Him with sincerity, no matter how broken, tired, or marked by guilt it may be. Therefore, if my story touched your life in any way, if it awakened something within you, or if it made you realize that there is a call for change that you shouldn't ignore, I invite you to walk with me on this journey. Subscribe to the channel, leave your comment, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this truth, because profound transformations begin when courage meets truth, and when truth finally finds space to illuminate what we have hidden for too long.